Let's talk about the Samsung S90C 55-inch. Now, out of the box is what I'm basically going off of. This is a stock or a default review. I will be calibrating this later, and I will be comparing this to other displays that have been calibrated. But for now, out of the box, I'm just going to say it. It's really oversaturated and really overexposed. Now, in English, this means your brightest highlights are just blowing out and you can't see details in things like clouds and in people's faces the way you should. And the oversaturation part, we have a lot of color bleeding. Again, if you don't know what that terminology means, it just means that where there's supposed to be detail, instead we just have an intense solid color where you're supposed to be able to see lines and wrinkles and definition. It's all being bled together and you're missing so much of your image quality. This is something that out of the box I feel shouldn't happen. Now, to be fair, you can go into a more dull or washed out mode like filmmaker or movie mode, but they have their own problems. So we'll talk about that maybe at a later date. But the more general modes that people are going to use like standard, completely overblown, completely overexposed. And it's actually really bad. Normally, it's just dynamic mode that looks like that, but this year, standard mode is exceptionally awful on the S90C. Now, you're going to have to dial it in. Even if you don't have experience, you are probably going to have to, or want to even, adjust things like the grass on a hockey or on a soccer field, or, the ice on a hockey ring or something like that, because it's going to be off. So just set those expectations early. And if you want, you can join my membership for $5 and I'll be able to help you with that. Now, on to low bitrate content, it still looks pretty awful. So there's no real getting around that. The processing is just not able to accommodate you there. Now, in terms of gaming also looks really blue. I think it's a common theme this year where everything is just ice cold. So you are going to still have to deal with that. Now, in terms of the gaming features this year, the menu and the user interface is pretty much the same, but there are a couple of new additions that I think are worth talking about. So if you go into the settings, you still do have the option to toggle whether you want it on auto or on, and I just turn it on. You have the virtual aim point this year, which are basically crosshairs. You can change the color. And then again, you can navigate through the user interface and access these things again, so it's not like you have to choose. Game Motion Plus, though, is still the biggest win for any Samsung gamer out there because you can add motion smoothing. You can also go in and change HDR to advanced or basic, which I think is really cool. And again, that's something you always see. Now, you can still see the picture while you're in the home menu if you need to do something like set up other things or see a source is working. And then you can snap back in and activate the game bar and then go back into the game settings, which again, new this year is the virtual crosshair basically, and it looks pretty decent. You can even edit it and do a couple other things, which I'll show you in a minute here. But honestly speaking, it's pretty cool how you can just drag and drop. The only thing I hated was the speed of how you move it around is really slow. You're probably seeing it here, but it's really slow to move around. Wish it would have been more zippy than that because it just takes a substantial amount of time. Don't know the reasoning behind that, but c'est la vie. Enough griping there. But in terms of all the features that you have with game mode, you still can turn it off and go into a regular picture mode. Now, the picture mode this year kind of is the same as what we've seen, eco being new this year. I think it's because of all those laws and everything, but we're just going to go down the list. So first up, we have dynamic mode. So dynamic mode, really cool. Standard mode, less cool, but still awful. Eco mode, it's also very cool. And then we have movie mode, very washed out and pukey. And then filmmaker mode, more of the same. So these are the modes outside of the game mode that you have access to. But for now, I'll just set it to standard because it just makes the most sense. And it still looks overly cool no matter what you do. So you're going to have to bear with that. Now, in terms of everything game mode related, again, you still do have a lot of the gaming goodness, I guess, as far as the responsive nature. Things can still look good. I'm not saying that game mode is bad just because it's like overly cool. Again, that can be adjusted, which I haven't done yet, but I want you to see like just how oversaturated and overblown everything is, particularly with gaming, because this is something that you, like, if you have no experience whatsoever with adjusting a TV, you are going to have to traverse. Because as you're clearly seeing, colors just don't operate in a way that makes sense. And honestly, I really don't know where their head was at with this. Like, When have we ever wanted colors so saturated that we lose all detail? I don't know why that's the thing. They could have toned it down a bit. Now, again, to be fair, in the interest of fairness, you can always tone it down yourself. But my perspective is that for these prices, you really shouldn't have to. Because if they're going to charge you pretty much top dollar for a 55-inch, you really should not have to do anything outside of take it out of the box and just enjoy it. So I did want to highlight and at least showcase that, even if it does sound like a little bit of a petty rant. Now, don't get me wrong, the image quality is still good. You still have decent highlights and stuff like that. And it is a pretty picture. Obviously, it's an OLED. But I just really didn't like how oversaturated the colors were and how cool everything was. I'm sure you can pick up on this. But again, out of the gate, that is something that I'm going to need to fix, and all of that good noise. But the television itself is really good. They offer a lot for the money, and I think if you're in the market for a TV, this is still a good pick, but I will be calibrating it later and showing you another comparison. So until the next video, stay tuned for that.